I'm starting the stream. You still there, Vincent? I lost you. All right, this is Charlie from RedBlueTalk. My channel is all about how politics and government impact people's lives. And this show is all about how politics and government impact people's lives. And I'm trying to reboot the show, do a few more interviews every week than I had been in the past. And the first thing you should do, regardless of what platform you're watching on, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, click follow. And I would be greatly appreciative of that because that's what tells the AI algorithms to push this story out to more people. My guest today, and I hope that he's actually here with me. Let me see what's going on here. You still there? Are you there, Vincent?
I'm still here.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Okay, we are
it was
live. We're live right now. My guest is Vincent Fields. How you doing today, Vincent?
doing well. How are you?
Listen, I appreciate you coming on here. I asked you to come on this show. You are the president of Westchester Young Democrats, which I'm going to ask you about that
Thank-
separately. But the topic tonight was to talk about United States Postal Service. I guess 2 Saturdays ago, you were one of the leaders of a march in White Plains protesting what's going on the national level. So give me a frame around what was happening.
So what was happening was a demonstration. What happened last Saturday was a demonstration and one of many around in the county protesting and the changes that were happening at the U.S. Postal Service. There has been a considerable effort to slow down the services that the post office has been um, providing for hundreds of years, and it's really, and it happened very fast, very aggressively, and really has a humongous impact on our country. So you know, so last Saturday in White Plains, in Peekskill, in Portchester, there were people, leaders, civil leaders such as myself, kind of really vocalizing our displeasure on on the changes that are happening.
So let's talk about what those changes are. And this is a national story. I understand that there have been lawsuits against the Postal Service and the Postmaster in many states. Although I think New York may not actually be one of the states suing. But the issues apparently cut nationwide, which has to do with
Yeah,
intentionally slowing down the mail by interrupting services within sorting facilities and actually decommissioning equipment, removing mailboxes,
yes.
all with the objective of interfering with the mail-in voting. Right? Isn't that what's at the core of this, or how would you frame that issue?
That is the issue. That is the kind of source of outrage. We have an election coming up. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Mail-in voting is so much more important, so much more seen as so much more important this year than other election years because it's we are trying to social distance. We're trying to not have crowds in public places. So having senior citizens or people who feel like they shouldn't go out in public to be able to vote by mail, which before was considered safe and easy. In New York State, we have absentee ballots. We don't have vote by mail per se. We have the option of actually putting in your ballot through an absentee process, which has been expedited by Governor Cuomo to make it easier for people to vote that way. And it's so these changes to the post office, something that has been seen and as something reliable, something that's always been there. It might not be the most efficient thing in the world if you ask your average American for this period of time, but it was still there. It was still
Mm-hmm.
you could still utilize it and still be seen as safe to pay your taxes, to pay your bills, to vote. And now, for the first time, I would say for the first time in its history, that reliability and that safety has been compromised. So the outrage. that we've been seeing across the country, not just in Westchester, is it's I feel it's coming from a really deep place of concern. What is actually happening to our government? That something that we kind of take for granted is now noticeably worse off
So,
under
Vincent,
this administration.
so to draw a broader circle around this thing, for several years there has been talk of privatizing large components of the mail service, reducing services. Republicans have not been friendly to the Postal Service historically, but this is a uniquely terrible politicization of the mail service itself. I mean, there
Yeah.
is nothing more essential than voting. Well, maybe there is. Maybe there are things. Delivering medicine is obviously more essential, perhaps, arguably, than voting. But we're weeks away from a major national election, and you have a president who in June installs a new postmaster general. Guy's name is Louis DeJoy, right?
Mhm.
By the way, just a quick sidebar here, and I'm putting you on the hot seat for 1 second. There's
Sure.
no harm intended here, but do you know the price of a postage stamp?
Do I know the price of a postage stamp? Let's say, you know, I'm one of those ditzy millennials that don't really use
Well,
it all that much.
all
Usually,
right.
usually I use postage at work.
Well, okay, then we're
So
we're
I
we're
don't.
we're even, because if I'm being perfectly candid, I didn't remember it either. So Louis DeJoy was dragged into the halls of Congress last Friday and grilled by the members of Congress, and one of the questions they asked him was, "What is the price of a postage stamp?" Turns out he actually did know the answer. It's 55 cents. But if I'm being candid, I couldn't remember it either. And I'll tell you why. I purchase stamps 4 or 5 times a year, mostly at the holidays to send Christmas cards.
Yeah, exactly.
But the reason I don't know the number is, first of all, it's changed frequently. And second, it's not printed on the stamps that I buy. And so I
Hmm.
don't see that every day. I don't know. And it's an interesting factoid. They also asked him, Katie Porter, one of the members of Congress, asked
Hmm.
DeJoy what was the price. After he answered the price of a stamp, they asked him what was the price of a postcard.
Hmm.
And the Postmaster General of the United States did not know the answer. I didn't either.
Hmm.
It's 35 cents. In any
Hmm.
event, in any event, there is an attempt here to suffocate the Postal Service, to thwart the timely delivery of mail, to interfere, thereby interfere with the mail-in vote, which will be substantial because of the presence of COVID-19. So how did this come together on a local level? How did you get enough people to form a protest in White Plains?
Well, I personally I was a speaker at the rally that I attended, and the organizers, local organizers, were people from that have their cred in other kind of issues. So,
Mm-hmm.
March for Our Lives, a local activist named Kelly Marks. She lives in White Plains. She called me up and wanted, like, would you speak on Saturday? And she kind of put together in a moment's notice, and shout out to her. But she these
What's up?
this issue is it's so blaring after all the white noise of what's happening in this country right now. It's so egregious and so noticeable in your everyday life that the call to action was kind of made so swiftly by these by these local activists,
Mm-hmm.
whether it being indivisible or what have you. So with and you were asking questions about, like, the very common metrics of a postage stamp and how much is the weight. I would hope the postmaster knows all those things like the back of his hand, because it's the major kind of argument of kind of the slowdown by DeJoy and the administration is that the post office is constantly losing money, it's not efficient, this, that, and the third. But in order to make that call, you need to know what your revenues are, what what your metrics are, and what's actually your product. If you don't know how much, if you don't know how much, a product that you're selling, how much that is, you don't know your margin, you don't know what you're losing, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah,
So
and
I
Vincent,
it's so, like,
he was happy to be oblivious to any of those
completely
details.
oblivious.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why I think a lot of activists, such as myself, kind of call bullpucky on this whole kind of notion that we need this kind of major slowdown when we need the post office the most. So it's really really startling. Mhm.
But where do you go from here? So, I mean, what do you think that protest accomplished, and how much confidence do you have that there is going to be any change?
Um, to be honest with you, I am stressing when I'm having these conversations with in my community about the post office and what are we going to be doing come election time. Is I stress the notion, and this is something a phrase that we use a lot in get out the vote efforts a weekend before an election. It's like, do you have a plan to vote? And
Hmm.
we kind of remind potential voters, it's like like, do you know how you're going to do it? We're saying that phrase right now, a couple months out. What is your plan to vote? Are you doing early voting? Or are you going to go in election day? Or are you going to do absentee? Did you order it, or did you kind of
Right.
request it already? Are you
Right.
going to put it in the mail?
Yep.
How are you going to drop it off? And I'm also encouraging people to be a little bit more creative this year and kind of use your community to your kind of really lean onto your community to make sure this really important task is done. So if you're a part of a church or a temple and there's XYZ amount of elderly people in that need to be absentee voters, and most of them don't want to put it in the mail, you can drop them off. You can drop it off at the board of election. The board of elections right here in White Plains.
Okay.
The board of legislatures in Westchester. It's going to put a drop. Is talking about putting a drop box there.
Okay.
So there are solutions
So what I'm
around
hearing,
this, but it's
what I'm hearing is that maybe there's more than one thing going on here. So there's the activism to sort of bring attention to the challenges of the post office, but it's all very focused on voting. Maybe the protest brought attention to the issue, but now
yeah.
it's part of a broader get out the vote initiative, it sounds like. Now, were you there on behalf of Westchester Young Democrats? Or how,
Yes, I was.
and tell me about Westchester Young Democrats. How many people? How young do you have to be?
So so usually I say around 16. So there's a lot of high schoolers who are again really energized with this new political energy and are really are very civically engaged, very tuned in on the issues
Yep.
like gun control and climate change, and are putting together these Black Lives Matter protests in the communities that never would have seen such a thing in years prior. It's quite startling to see. I'm amazed by it, and I talk about it all the time.
Mhm.
And so our cap is at 35,
Okay.
and but so
I
60 to
blew out the
35.
cap. How many people do you have in the group?
I would say close. I guess we have around 150 members, and then a lot of people are very engaged on a lot of things that we on the activities that we normally do. Of
Well,
course,
a
our
lot of
normal.
young people all over Westchester, so I could see hopefully maybe those numbers will get higher. Is there a number or an email or knowing your generation, a website or a Facebook
Website.
page or Instagram account that they can go to?
So yes, we are on Facebook. We're on Instagram. I You can reach out to us that way, and that's the best way to really hear about our events and what our activities we're going to be doing during the fall.
And so
And we
the
do,
and the way to do it is look up Westchester Young Democrats.
yes, Westchester Young Democrats.
Nice. Well, so let's dig into this whole concept of mail voting and what's going on with this election. So filled out an absentee ballot application on behalf of myself and my family. We one person per absentee ballot application, and I had each
Hmm.
person sign their application, and I put each one into a separate envelope, and I shoved them into a postal mailbox down the street from my house. And
Hmm.
I'm expecting that sometime after September 18th, I will receive an absentee ballot for each one of those applications.
Hmm.
Now, let me start with election day, and then we'll work our way back because I know that these are dates that are important here. So
Yeah.
Tuesday, November 3rd, is election day. Old-fashioned voting is still open. If
Yeah.
you want to put a coffee filter on your face and walk into a poll, you can still do that. Correct, Vincent?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Polls are open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. in New York State. That's fact. I known that for many years. I'm confident with that information. Now, there is also in New York State a early voting period which ends on Sunday, November 1st, and I believe the first day is October 24th.
Yes, it's the previous Saturday.
It's a week before, okay?
Yeah,
So there's a period of time when people can vote in person in advance of Election Day, but know this, that polling place may not be the same place as your regular polling place.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, let's work our way back even further. You can still request, as of today, you can still request an absentee ballot application. And that process works like this. You have to fill out a form requesting an absentee ballot be sent to you. You have to send your application to the Board of Elections, or you could bring it into the Board of Elections in person. If you don't trust the mail, if you think it's going to take too long, you could bring it in 25 Carapa Street in White Plains if you're living in Westchester County. If you're not living in Westchester County, you got to find out where your county board of elections is, and you have to march it into that office. But you could use a 55-cent stamp and mail it in. Just make sure you give yourself about, I would say, 2 weeks to make sure without any uncertainty, remove all uncertainty that thing gets there on time. On or about September 19th is what I read on the Board of Elections website. They will start sending out absentee ballots. When you receive the ballot, it's just like voting. You fill in the pencil marks, you shove it into an envelope, which they give you. You sign the back of the envelope. I don't remember from June, I don't remember whether or not you have to put your own stamp on that envelope. Somehow.
No, it's paid. It's paid.
Is it prepaid?
You don't have to pay.
Okay.
It's prepaid.
Okay, great. So they give you a prepaid envelope, and you put it back in the mail, and that thing has to be postmarked by a certain date, which I'm not even going to say because I don't know it for a fact, but they will tell you that on the ballot. They'll tell you that when they send you the absentee ballot. Or you could take that completed absentee ballot and drop it off at the Board of Elections. Or, and this I know from reading the website for a fact, you can take your completed absentee ballot and march it into a polling place, and they will accept it as your vote. So there's a lot of ways to get that absentee ballot back. But if you're counting on the mail, it has to be postmarked by a specific date. That matters because in the June primary, a lot of ballots didn't get postmarked on a timely basis. And that is the risk of the Postal Service being intentionally slowed down. The reason why that diabolical technique could work is because it could prevent a lot of absentee ballots from counting if they're not postmarked on a timely basis. Have I left out anything?
So, no, that was you hit the nail on the head. And it's so to be, to if you're if you're interested in actually putting in an absentee ballot, and the reason why it's like you don't want to be in a public place, you have to start thinking about your own kind of life and your own kind of situation where you can still be able to hand it in, be able to hand it in, and not rely on the post office if you don't trust it. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but it's kind of like, we're in 2020, and, another kind of weird monkey wrench has been thrown into our democracy. And I feel like if people are conscious of what possibly can happen, then people will make smart choices to make sure their power is not taken away. It's not taken away, as in their vote. So
let me take a page. Let me take a page from your book,
Yep.
Vincent. Vincent Fields, what is your voting strategy?
My voting strategy. So on that first Saturday, and this is what I did on during the primary. On that first Saturday, of early voting. I was
Okay.
basically one of the first people online, and I wish if early voting is it's pretty new in New York State. I know other states have had it for years. We the new Democratic Senate majority made sure that happened in their first year, and we have it and has been successful. So for um, so that's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
It was really easy, and
So,
that's what I'm
so,
going to do.
so, Vincent, your voting strategy is to vote in person during the early voting period, and you're even more specific. You're going to go in on the first day of the early voting period, and you've identified what that polling location is. I'm guessing it's the same one that you used in the June primary,
Hmm.
and you know where you're going, and you're allotting enough time to get through that process. I'm going to tell you
Hmm.
my personal voting strategy. My personal voting strategy is on October 20, I'm sorry, on August 23rd, I filled out an absentee ballot application, which I sent via mail to the Westchester County Board of Elections. My expectation is that by October 1st, I should receive an absentee ballot in the mail. My
Hmm.
plan is to complete the absentee ballot the day that I receive it, stick a stamp on it, or as you said, no, it's got business reply, so I don't have to put a stamp on it.
Yeah.
Send it back to the Board of Elections immediately the day I get it, which would be
Yep.
the first week of October, which gives it more than 15 days to get there in advance of the postmark deadline, which is probably the day before the election or the day of the election. So that is my strategy, and I think that's probably the strategy of a lot of people.
Yeah.
And just we completely close the loop here, the reason why this voting by mail is possible is because in New York State, the governor signed an executive order stating that fear of COVID-19 is itself considered a medical condition which validates your use of an absentee ballot. So before COVID-19, you either had to say you were going to be out of state, or that you had a medical
Hmm.
condition, or permanent disability, or some other reason
You're
why
on
you could.
vacation. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, all those were valid reasons. But now
Yeah.
a valid the medical excuse is COVID-19 is now a valid medical excuse. That's it. You don't have to have COVID-19. Fear of contracting COVID-19 is itself a valid medical excuse. You just check that box. I
Yeah.
believe it's a question number 2 on the form, and off you go. And but if you're using the postal service, Vincent says give it time and be worried.
Be, give it. Yeah.
Right.
You can't take anything for granted, and at this juncture, and if you make it a priority, I think we'll be okay. So and just be mindful. We're being very aggressive about a displeasure at the post office, and hopefully service will come back to normal. But please be mindful of your mail. Please be like, are you missing something? Time. Like send postcards to family members in Florida and ask them how long it takes.
I saw
I'm doing that. I'm doing that as well.
I saw an article in today's LoHUD newspaper by Mark Lungarello where he interviewed a guy who he did exactly what I did. He requested an absentee ballot via mail to Westchester County Board of Elections, and his letter in which he made the request was returned undeliverable. Why?
Yep.
It was addressed in a perfectly accurate way. It's not clear. Now, the mail processes thousands and millions of pieces of mail a day, so we can't conclusively say that something terrible happened or that this was intentional, but it certainly doesn't look good because there was nothing wrong with the guy's letter. It had a stamp on it, it was addressed accurately, and it was returned to him. Now, if that happens to me, I'll be
Yeah.
calling Mark Langerello, I guess.
Yeah. And it's a, and you know, we can, this conversation can, I guess if people don't really receive mail on regularly, or don't get, to go completely paperless, so they don't get any physical bills, or don't get medicines medicine through the mail or anything like that. People are not receiving these things and are noticing them. I'm expecting a check in the mail from my previous employer. It left Albany, New York, 2.5 weeks ago, and I'm still waiting on
No,
it. It has
that's not good.
it's not good,
Yeah.
and I'm talking on personal experience. I don't want to alarm anybody, but this is serious.
No, that is very
So
serious,
there
Vincent. And
are
let me give you a statistic, okay? A couple of years ago, I went to a community meeting to talk about there was some kind of postal issue in Mount Vernon, and I don't remember what it was. And the local postmaster for our area was there, and he said, and this was not more than 10 years ago, he said that you could deliver a letter, first class, from any address in New York State to another location in New York State in one day.
yeah.
And I was surprised at the
Yeah.
time. So if you're not getting something from Albany to White Plains, which is I assume where you live, in a period of
Hmm.
2 weeks, something is dramatically broken.
Something's dramatically broken, and I'm seeing all these horror stories that are happening in distribution centers where food is rotting, where insulin is spoiling. It smells. There's rats. There's a real big issue that is happening with a big institution in our country. Something that we took for granted. It's like, what happened if the post office stopped working? We're in
Yeah,
the middle of that right now.
it
So
would not be
if we're
good.
make a plan for voting, and really be mindful about what actually can work, and lean on your neighbors, because all you need to do, if you're doing the absentee, it has to make it to the board of elections in White Plains, if you're in Westchester.
So
So there's different ways you can do that.
one last anecdote about the post office, Vincent. I read in the New York Times that there was a delivery of live chicks, baby
Yeah,
chickens.
that's very common. People do that all the time.
I didn't know.
They could,
Yeah.
chickens can stay in their eggs and be fine, and just live off the substance of their eggs for almost a business week. It's
I had
taking
no idea.
more time than normal.
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's
So
it's insane.
apparently a shipment
Yeah.
of 4,500 live chicks sadly arrived, and they weren't live chicks when they got to their destination because of these slowdowns that we're talking about right now. So it's medicine, it's livestock, it's bills,
It's small businesses,
it's
not
payments.
being,
Yeah, it's all kinds of things that are life impacting, economy impacting, and very soon it could be election impacting. So have a plan to vote. That's the best thing I got out of this half hour. I appreciate you coming on here. I'm just going to say to my friends who are watching, there we go. Folks, thanks for watching Red Blue Talk. This is all about how politics and government impact people's lives. Like, subscribe, follow, you know what to do. Keep tuning in. I most sincerely appreciate it. And don't forget, I'm also on WVOX 1460 AM, Mondays at 3 o'clock on Westchester Eye on the Radio. That's it for me today. Thanks, everybody, and